Welcome, everyone. We have another special podcast today with Mr. Alec Torelli. Alec, how's it going?
Hey, man. It's good. It's been a while since we've caught up. We were talking off the air for a second, but thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are in a very interesting place. I would say that you've been very active. I follow you on Instagram, and I see the updates. You've been providing a lot of content and insight into the COVID-19 situation. Could you tell us a little about where you are and what's happening there? Because you are in a hot zone, to say the least, maybe the hottest zone.
Yeah, we are right at ground zero here. So I'm in Italy. I spend part of my year here. My wife's from here, and so we spend a couple months a year in Italy, and we got kind of caught up here when this whole thing happened. So I've been here now, and yeah, it's the hot zone, to say the least. So Italy has different. Italy's a big place, right? It's like the size of California, but specifically the area I'm in is the epicenter of the whole outbreak. So, for example, the case number one that was discovered is 24 miles from my house, and our hospital is actually the one that got hit the hardest. And if you look at our city, the per capita ratio of people that are infected is the highest. It's actually 1 out of 90 in our city, which is, I don't know if it's the highest in the world. It's definitely the highest in Italy. So we're really at the epicenter here.
Wow.
And it's sad to see what's happening. We have friends that work in the hospital. It's tragic, but it also has given me the foresight to understand how this thing plays out and like the behavioral and psychological impacts it has. So I've been putting out a lot of content on alectorelli.com. Like just, one piece that was interesting is just like the ways that people react to COVID. So going from, it being something that people consider alarmist all the way to being paranoid about it, just watching people progress through those phases. So there's some interesting content there to check out about this subject, but it's, I've been in the house for 45 days. I've sort of lost count, but we're not even allowed to leave the house here. So we can't go on walks. The only thing you can leave the house to do is go grocery shopping, but they really encourage you not to. And I've been getting groceries delivered, and it's been a month and a half.
Well, how is that system there? Because in the rest of the world, how I know it as, Postmates and Uber Eats and that stuff, they drop it off. How is the delivery food system there?
Yeah, it is incredible. I'm very, very impressed. So very efficient. There's apps too. We have our own apps. We don't have Postmates, but we have like Supermercato 24, like whatever, right? But it's more than that. There's actually like volunteer services that will deliver like prescriptions and stuff like that. Because it's not just food that you need. Like think about it. What do people do with their like medicines, right? Like that would create a whole different system of people needing to be connected socially, right? So they have these volunteer systems that deliver things to the elderly. They have like certain times where people can go, and they have like, it's amazing. Needless to say, I won't bore you with the details, but I'm very impressed. We haven't left the house in 45 days. We have people that are delivering all types of things. And they actually, so one of the alarming things is that so we're not even allowed to go on walks, right? So the lockdown measures are way stricter, and it's still taking, a long time to flatten this curve. But they're expecting that you're going to have to wait till May 4th. And today's April 8th or something. So another month before you're allowed to go on walks. So that's not like going back to restaurants, life is normal, V-shaped recovery. That's just going on a walk. So it's potentially going to be 2.5 months before I can leave my house.
Right. And the interesting thing you say about that is too, like obviously I know you're heavily based too in California, LA, I think it is,
my family's from there.
In Vegas or other areas. You travel around, you do a lot of poker stuff. We're going to cover all that. But so you're basically saying you're predictably like you're ahead. Like basically you could almost look at the US and say, okay, you're actually this far behind. So in reality, the US do you have an estimate on the US when you think that things will get back to normal, like, or even where people should be? Because right now it's kind of weird. They're not saying you can't go outside in a lot of areas, and it's different, right? So like, do you anticipate June? Like when do you think it's like, all right, people are going to go back to restaurants and things are going to be back to normal? Like when you think
so I have like a little bit more of a bearish view on this, and I'm a really optimistic person. Like people know me, know that I'm like very upbeat, glass half full, like very optimistic about all my content and everything. I actually don't see that happening. A lot of this is just based on a study I read out of Imperial College, where they predicted that there's like the sort of like hopeful best case scenario is that there's like an intermittent economy where you have like 2 months of lockdown and a month of limited interaction. But if you just think about it logically, like, okay, let's say, okay, now it's over, it's June. what are we going to do? We're just going to reopen the economy. Everything's going to resurge and then we're going to close it down again. I mean, just logically, like, how is this, what is the end game here? And the end game is one of two things in my mind. And it's quite binary. There's either herd immunity, which means 60%. And for the rate of infection of this disease, you need 60% of people, or what the experts saying, that you need 60% of people infected to have herd immunity, to where the disease doesn't spread to exceed the hospital capacity. So that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. And if it does, we're going to have dramatic consequences to the hospital system. So we need that to happen slowly. So the only real solution I see here is just a vaccine. So I'm actually planning on life not returning to normal for 18 months from when they started working on it, which is about 16 months from now. That's just really what I see happening.
I'm more on your thought process or your belief. Like some of the smartest people I know have even saw this coming right away, like the exponential growth, and realizing it was, it's just kind of disappointing that the leaders like Trump or in the US, but other world leaders weren't really more be able to get ahead of this, right? Because like they have scientists or the doctors and people, really smart people that are experts in that particular field that saw this probably, or were seeing it happen. It developed. It's like a slow moving car crash, and just could, I guess it's not easy to shut down borders and control a country, right? And have everyone just, shut everything down. But it does seem like there could have been more to prevent this situation.
Well, there's a great quote by Michael Levitt, who I think was, I forgot his position, but he was prominent in this industry. And it basically says everything you do before pandemic seems alarmist and everything you do after seems inadequate. And that's because pandemics grow exponentially. People aren't hardwired to think exponentially. So most of my content has been raising awareness about what exponential is and why it's different than linear. So linear, you take 30 steps, it's 30, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You take 30 steps exponentially, most people don't realize you're at a billion.
Right.
Okay. So 30 and a billion are very, very different. So that's why when there was 100 cases and case 1 arrived in Italy, I didn't go around a single person. So when I saw that case 1 was in a town near me, I was like, the market's going to implode. This is over. Like it's going to hit the US. It's going to be a pandemic. Like all these things were inevitable in my mind because you have a disease that's spreading at doubling every 3 days. There's just no way this doesn't happen. I started sounding the alarm in February, and I was like, and I saw what happened here, and I was just like, the US market is not pricing this in. This thing's going to implode. And I still don't think that they're really pricing in how this whole thing
because that's
over a long period of time.
That's the interesting part when you start saying, because the US is like my financial advisor actually like literally 20 minutes ago messaging me, because I was basically I'm back and forth, like, do I want to pull everything out right now? Because right now there's like a nice surge up, but based on what? Because there was like $2 trillion influx into the economy. But if there's no restaurants, there's no work, there's nothing's happening, and no one's going out, and no one's moving. How is the economy going to move? Like, what's happening?
I got out of here in February. I was like, I'm completely gone. I was zero equity positions.
So you really think restaurant, like what does that mean if restaurants and things aren't open for 18 months and movie theaters and sports? Like, you don't think we'll have
sports? Forget about sports. Sports, there's no chance. That's
like NFL in September. You're saying there's no way the NFL.
No chance.
Because also, how would they, even if you could, it doesn't even make sense, right? How would you do it? You would just have no fans in the stadiums. The players.
Yeah, that's a possibility. So when I say no chance, I mean return to normal. That's my opinion. Again, I could be wrong, but the thing that, look, I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not an economist. I'm not a global macro investor. What I do is I listen to all the people that are the smartest. Mark Lipsitch, the ex-commissioner of the FDA. These people tweet their advice for free. Nicholas, I forgot his last name. I retweet all these people. You can follow me on Twitter. Just look who I'm following. All the people that are the smartest are the most concerned. So the people that are the furthest away on the end of the spectrum that are saying the most seemingly extreme things are all the people that know what's going on. So if you listen to, you know what I mean? That's the thing that's the most concerning about this. And it's been like that from the beginning. People are like, oh, we couldn't have seen this coming. It's like, no, every epidemiologist and virologist saw this coming in January. They were all sounding the alarm. Nobody was listening, but they were sounding the alarm.
Right. Well, yeah, I actually think I had it. I'm pretty sure, but now I'm not really sure the timeline on when stuff happened and exactly. Like I had all the symptoms around the Super Bowl, so like early February.
Oh wow.
And I had like the weirdest cough. I had bad fever. I was in bed for like days. Couldn't, like, just like shot. Like my whole thing was shot. Like that was just like a bad cold. And there was someone that we knew who came. He's from Andorra, but he was in South Korea, and he came and visited. And then after we all got sick, he was really sick. And I don't know. Like, I'm not saying I had it. I'm just saying I think I might have had it. And that's sort of the thought about it is like, there's no way to, like, for a while, no one even knew, or there was no testing, or no one even knew what it was. Right?
You need an antibody test, really. That would be the best thing if they can do antibody tests.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I don't want to spend the podcast.
I know we can talk about this forever. But if you want more, very my thoughts, just check out AlecTorelli.com. I put out my predictions and 7 things I think are coming about this. And
but you're bullish, and you do think that the world has changed. You're pretty much like saying this is like, do you feel people?
No, I'm bearish. No, I'm not bullish. I'm bearish.
I'm sorry. You're bearish. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. You don't believe it's you're on that side of the fence, and you believe that. Do you think like we'll be wearing masks even in like a year from now to go outside, stuff like that? Like,
we're going to be in this scenario until there's herd immunity or a vaccine. So there's it's just binary, right? So you have to think that like nothing is going to change other than the curve is flattened to where the hospitals aren't overrun, so we can have limited social interaction. But if you read, Tim Ferriss put out a great post from a person in the know that was a guest blogger on his website, and the most alarming thing is the point at which you have to enact extreme social distancing measures to not exceed the hospital capacity is when the hospital's at 4% of capacity. So it doesn't really give you much room to reopen the economy. And you also have to think about psychologically, what are people going to do? Are people going to want to be in a crowded restaurant? Are people going to want to be around all these other people? Like, the more people know other people that got sick and are close to other people, they're not going to want to behave and interact in the same ways. Yeah, there's a lot to it.
You get comfortable too. You get food delivery. You're at home, and then you're just like.
I don't think people are going to want to go back. I mean, obviously it's tragic people that lost their jobs, but the people that can telework aren't going to want to go back to work.
And even people that they say it's safe and it's okay to get back out there, it's like you still probably right away the second the doors open, you're not just going to necessarily run out, or you're going to be like, all right, let's feel it out. Let's take it slow. And I mean, that's why I don't understand how restaurants can survive in these other places. Already the business is so tough, because the whole thing just sort of like, they're not paying rent, or the landlords, whatever. So it's just like and then people make excuses, right? And it's not even like unjust, but it's like, I can't pay this or I can't pay that. Well, they could, but they can use it as an excuse. And like, it's not like it's their last dollar necessarily. And the whole system just sort of like, everyone just is like slow paying or not paying. And it's just like,
I guess my fundamental belief is that like, market expectation and public psychology is here and reality is down here, and all this delta is just not priced in yet. And I think we have a long way to go. And I don't mean the markets are going to come down this much specifically. I just mean like general macro view of the severity and what people think. There's a big delta. And I think that my view is I'm on the bearish side of that.
All right. I got it. Well, move on. Stay safe out there. And it's interesting that, you are in a very hot zone, and you do provide a lot of content. So I think that's interesting. People can check it out. I do want to show here. We do have the website, AlecTorelli.com. So you focus as well. We'll cover this, but you do go through the COVID-19, and you also have
on the blog section of that.
Yeah. On the blog area there. So we'll go through that. But first, I want to just kind of dive in, because you are, I'd say, one of the more active and content oriented people in poker. I put you in a short list. We could rattle off some names. Some have been on the podcast before, but you've been very active for a long time with this. So tell us a little bit about your how you got into poker. Give me a little bit of briefing how you went this route, because poker, you played high stakes cash, played tournaments, you do a lot of that. You're more into the content side. So give people a little background on your poker journey.
Yeah, I mean, poker started for me. I'm 33, but I'm a dinosaur in poker. I started playing when I was 16. So I had a long poker career until I started creating content, and I had got to a point where and I started playing during the moneymaker boom, and I did well early on. Like I did well online in high school, and I dropped out of college at 18, but I made a final table at a tournament and was one of the biggest winners online in 2007. So I had success early on. I had it wasn't all history. I had a lot of ups and downs along the way, made a lot of mistakes in my career. But by the time I got to around 2012, I was playing in Macau. I moved out to Macau to play in some of the big games out there. And I like got to a point in my career where I felt like, I've done a lot in poker, and I've got to experience a lot. I learned a lot, and I'm at like the point in my poker career, specifically when it comes to playing poker, where I still love the game. I'll always love the game. I'll always want to have poker be a slice of the pie, but there's other things I want to do. And a lot of that comes to interacting with others and sharing. And, poker is a solitary game where you it's you versus everyone else. So it's not a team sport. And I missed I had friends and whatever, but I missed like the social element of being able to interact with other people in that way.
Man, you got to go live on Twitch. What's going on? That's the answer for you. Have you tried that? Have you done some Twitch? Do you? I know you're big on YouTube, but
I do. I really commend the people that do Twitch. I have mad respect because I know how much more work that is in a lot of ways because you have to be there. Whereas YouTube, you can do on your own time. You can edit your videos, and you could produce a piece of content and it's 5 minutes. Whatever. Twitch is 5 hours. So I just wasn't able to commit that with my lifestyle. And I feel like YouTube is more my pace, or podcasts or social media. But it basically just came out of a desire to like share content and things I've learned. And I wanted to get into speaking and writing. And I like video. And so YouTube was a natural fit. And I just basically started, I traveled around the world playing poker, and I just started saying, hey, I'm in this city. Here's where I am. This is a cool place. And let me talk about a hand of poker I played. So I just started this show called The Hand of the Day, where I just shared a hand of poker I played randomly around the world. And that caught on. And that was like my content from the beginning of my YouTube journey. And I think it was 2014 or something, 2013.
And when did you actually start this YouTube? Because you have a lot of videos, a lot of different subject matters. When did you get into this? How did you decide? Like, was there someone who did it in poker, or a different type of channel? Who got you to go ahead and start up a YouTube channel?
It was just kind of like my wife and I was in a hotel room in Monaco playing I think I was playing the 100K tournament, the high roller tournament. And then, the 5 or 10K main, I forgot, it changes size every year, and some cash games. And I was like, you know what? Like I have a story to tell. And I think that like, I'm doing something interesting that people would find interesting. Like, why don't I, like, what am I going to do? And so I think that was it. Sick bluff and the EPT Monaco high roller. I think that's the first hand I remember sharing. And you're seeing it there. And I was like, there was this really cool hand that I want to talk about that I saw. Let me just, my wife just took the iPhone and she filmed the video of me. And I'm just like, let me just put it on this YouTube.
Right.
And so I just uploaded it. And then every time I played an interesting hand, I would upload it, and then like people started watching, and and then I just kept doing it. Obviously, it grew from there, and there's more to it, but like it was just kind of like this burning desire to share things, and finally, the pain gets big enough, you make a change, and then that's what it was.
How important do you feel that is in these type of ventures and things to just go ahead and dive in? Like you said, you just uploaded a video because you were probably a bit uncomfortable. It's like, oh, your wife said, she's like, do this. And it's just like, oh, I'm going to throw it up, and it's like going to look weird, or it's not edited right, or the camera's not right, or it's going to look was that uncomfortable, or was that something just after you did one or two, you're just like, all right, I'm just going to do it? Because I mean, you have a lot.
I mean, perfect's the enemy of done, right? So like, I think in the beginning, you really have to just accept that it's not going to be what you want. And I think people see, like, well, let's just use like a podcast, right? You see your setup, it's beautiful. We were talking about it off the air. You got this beautiful setup in Miami, or Joe Rogan, and you're like, oh, well, I can't start unless I'm like the person that I'm looking up to, who I want to be. Let's say I want to be Joe Rogan. I want to have this podcast where there's these brilliant minds and these beautiful microphones and a team. I don't have that. I can't start. It's like, what you don't realize is that nobody starts on that level, unless you're, you have $10 million and you're just dropping it into your new venture. But like, people don't start at that level. So you all start at a level where you're going to be embarrassed about if you look back 5 years later. But, nobody is who they are. They never started as that person. So yeah, there was that aspect of it for sure. But like I said, I think it's a situation where like you're comfortable in whatever you're doing, and you have something you want to do or you want to start, and that it sort of like eats away at you slowly, right? And you feel a little bit of discomfort or pain around that activity. But eventually you realize one of two things, right? You realize that the activity wasn't as important to you as you thought it was. So you don't make the change or make the breakthrough or go through the sacrifice to pursue that activity, or the pain gets big enough that it compels you to do something different than what you're doing right now. And for me, it was the latter, because this was actually really important to me. And most things in life are the former, where I just say, oh, I would love to be this, I'd love to do that. But then you don't want to do it bad enough to put in the work, or to go through the pain, or to expose yourself to all the potential insecurities you can feel around putting yourself out there to the world. In this case, before you're ready, so to speak, or not before you're ready, but before you have some magnificent product.
Right.
I think it's really important to just do it and correct course as you go.
Has there been a time? What's the longest period you haven't uploaded a video since like 5 years plus? It looks like you've been doing this. Has there been a period where you took a break, or you're like, I'm not doing this, or did you always been pretty consistent?
I don't think so. I don't think there's been a period I took a break.
There's
periods where I produce different volumes of content. So I'll have periods where I also have another channel, youtube.com/Alec Torelli. You're looking at ConsciousPoker. So I have 2 YouTubes. And the second one's kind of where the first one was. Sorry. The second one's where the first one was a couple of years ago, the second one's where the first one was a couple of years ago, where I'm kind of just starting. I'm still getting my feet wet, whatever. But I think the longest period I've gone without uploading, not specifically a video, but sometimes I create content, is probably like 2 weeks, a month.
What's your other channel? It's just Alec Torelli.
Yeah.
I just see one comes up where it says Alec Torelli. It does. I don't see. I see the.
Let me see if I can drop it in chat.
ConsciousPoker. But I want to ask you about this kind of your experience with YouTube as well, because I look here and it's interesting because you'll have the same with my videos. Like some videos do well, like they just sort of ignite, and that obviously algorithms and different, maybe the thumbnail or the title. But I'm just like looking at, do you remember your first video? Like a lot of these are like 2K, 600, 1K, 5K, 7K, and then all of a sudden you had 101,000 views on maybe your 12th video or so, or 15th video. Why do you think that video in particular, just like looking back here in the first 20, the one that got so many, do you have any? Why would like that spark? Because I have some too that are like huge, and I'm just sometimes like, I don't understand why that is like so much bigger. Like how does that work?
I want to sound like some marketing guru that I know exactly why and whatever, and I could replicate the success formula, but like honestly, this is like, I mean, there's some like threads that you can try and create through one video and another, but a lot of it's noise too. And one of the things that poker teaches you to do is separate the facts from the noise. So like, did you win money because you made a good play, or did you win money because you got lucky? And so when it comes to separating the facts from the noise with the YouTube videos, it's like, it's hard to find the thread of like, what is the one thing you did? And I have some videos, like I have a lot of polarity in my videos. So I'll have, like a handful of videos, maybe 5 or 10 that have 100K, 200K views. And then I'll have other videos that have 2K views. And sometimes I release a video and I'm like, this one is going to be the one. And sometimes it does well, but other times I'm like, it's going to be the one and it gets 2K views. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so dope. I worked so hard on this video. I SEO'd it. I did everything. And
do you have, how is your team right now? Do you have people that do your videos? Do you upload and they edit? Do you edit your own, or a mixture depending on what it is? Or
it's really a mixture. So I have people that work with me, and I have people that freelance, and I have people that are more ongoing. It just sort of depends. And it depends on the video. So like the coronavirus videos, I did them all myself because I really wanted them to look a certain way. It was delicate content. I wanted the images to appear when I wanted them to appear. So I actually edited all those videos myself. So if you want to see my editing, look at the COVID videos on ConsciousPoker or Alec Torelli. But then other times, like obviously putting hands in the replayer. We have our own like ConsciousPoker branded replayer. I have like
that's a Share My Pair, right? That's what I do.
Exactly. Through Share My Pair, but it's our own ConsciousPoker background. Share My Pair is great. They have really a lot of flexibility to do that. Yeah. So I'll have someone put the hands in the replayer, or like my hand of the day videos. Those are all edited by an editor. And then when it comes to like uploading, like I'll usually upload it, but then I'll have a graphic designer make the thumbnail, and he has access to my YouTube. And then sometimes I have help with SEO. Sometimes I do it myself. So it just depends.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. So you do a full mix. It's not always one way or the other, but you definitely, you know how many videos you have roughly on there? It's a lot, right? I mean, it's like you have 500, 300,
600, 500.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of the more active in that space. So that's pretty cool. It's also fun. Like similarly, I have a decent YouTube portfolio now where it's building. Yeah,
you put out a ton of content, dude. Because not only YouTube, you're on Twitch, you're on Instagrams.
That helps though, because the Twitch is like highlights, so it's almost like you do the Twitch and then you can pour it into the highlight video on.
But you have an editor that repurposes.
Yeah, I have a couple, people that do it. Vadran in particular, he edits my stuff and does a lot of the posting and content, because it gets to be a little overwhelming. And what point did you decide to do that? Because I think it's hard. You have to, it takes money to make money, that whole age old thing. You got to, but also at some point it's like you have to decide, all right, I'm doing this. If I spend this, it may not be the right, it seems like, I don't know if I want to do that, but really you understand that that's going to grow your brand, right? It's going to leverage it. And then there's opportunity cost. If you're doing the videos and editing when you really should be doing some, more content, how did you come up and decide? Was that hard for you to pull the trigger and sort of expand your team?
Yeah. Like, so it's a couple things, right? Like I didn't have a clear business plan. I didn't launch my YouTube with a training site on the back end. My ConsciousSpoker came, I think, 3 years after. So like 3 years of just 300 videos I probably made in those 3 years. So 200 videos. So like, I didn't have this, like, I'm going to invest and have a business plan. And then each subscriber is worth this much, and I'm going to get them into a funnel. And like, that wasn't on my radar. So, but at the same time, I was doing well in poker and I could afford to have like an editor. So first it comes down to also like, what is your business plan and what can you afford? And if there is a business plan element, you have to think of like, how much time is this person going to save you and how much time is that worth to you? And then how much potential ROI can this person have on your brand and business? Another thing though, is that it got to a point where I was like wanting to work at a certain speed, but I was limited because I had to do so much of the stuff. And so that pain gets big enough where you're like, I can't express a message I have or my thoughts. I can't be who I am because I'm spending more of my time doing all these other tasks that aren't my core competency. I'm not good at them. There's someone that's better. And ultimately they can be outsourced, whereas I can't be outsourced. I can't replace myself on this podcast with you. So I have to be here, but I don't have to be in the lab editing a video. So it's the balance there. And ultimately what I've always done is really trusted my intuition, and also trust that like the right people will come in your life at the right time to help get you to where you need to go. I'm like a big believer in that, but it's also been like really trusting like my intuition. And then I think also it really helps you see and figure out how much you value something. So like it's kind of like you hit these crossroads in life to help you understand like which direction you want to go. And like when it's time to invest whatever, $500 into hiring someone to do something, do you really value that person enough to pay that 500, or would you rather allocate the 500 to something else like traveling or a subscription or anything, right? And there's no judgment there. It's just, it helps people understand what they value. And so I think that's a personalized decision. And for me, I kept increasingly realize that building content online was something I valued more and more.
Yeah, I definitely can. I agree with you on this. I have an interesting live in the chat right now. MT says, I have just got home from cycling around Hyde Park in London, ironically near Imperial College, and there are hundreds of people relaxing. Very different to Italy. Alex, so this is sort of you referenced Imperial College early in the show, and some of the information you read, I believe. I don't know if it's the same one or what he's referring to, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you believe like that London or US and places that are just not really like locking down is just a major mistake? Because is it airborne? I've heard different things out saying 70% transmissible by air in closed spaces, versus originally I think it was like, oh, it's like if you touch a surface someone touched, but if they cough, or like how far away you should be. How big a deal do you think this is that people are in a park and just kind of like laying out in an area?
Yeah. So like, okay, so I'm not a scientist, so this is above my pay grade in terms of like how much it transmits via air. My understanding sounds like the same as yours, whereas originally we thought it wasn't airborne. Now it sounds like it is. And this is why I just look at the measures that Italy takes, for example. This is why, and China, this is why you're not allowed to leave the house, because you also can't trust people to like not interact with other people. So for example, when we were allowed to leave the house in Italy, people weren't going to the cities because everything was closed. What was happening? Everyone went to the parks. So the parks became more crowded than the cities. And naturally, people were interacting. They were touching things. They were sitting on benches. They were having picnics. They were walking. They were running, and they were around other people.
Yeah, or they're chatting, right? Because it's like they're like, oh, it's safe, or it's like there's no surface. I'm out in an area, and then they're talking. It's like 2, 3, 4 feet apart, but they're still too close, and whatever, So it's I think. I think you're right. That you mentioned that's like, in order for this to really work, you just kind of have to go overboard and be like, look, no one do anything, because you're touching elevators, you go down the stairs, you're touching the railing, people aren't paying attention, whatever. It's like, it just causes things to happen. If you want to really shut it down, you got to just go overboard. It seems like.
That's why like that quote is so good, because everything you do before seems alarmist, everything you do after seems inadequate, and we've really seen that here in Italy, where it's like they took incremental measures to shut things down incrementally, like they've done in every country, right? They start slow and then they add more and more and more, and we see that happening in the U.S. The U.S. again is probably just 6 weeks behind, so they're starting to add more and more. You see the governor of New York doubling the fines for people going out and social distancing. All this is going to happen everywhere as the disease spreads. I hope it doesn't spread everywhere, but if it does, all these people are going to take these incremental measures from, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, where we should just go from 1 to 5, because it's inevitable to get to 5, but it's easier to just mitigate, less damage ahead of time.
For sure.
Yeah, I wrote a piece on, the UK's approach to COVID and the herd immunity. So that's on alectorelli.com too. Scroll down a little bit. Scroll down. No. Yeah, there you go. So there's a piece on herd immunity. Again, I'm not a scientist. I talked my thoughts about it psychologically and why I thought herd immunity was not going to work, basically because you can't just tell people that you think you're going to let them not make it in the hospital. I think that's not going to win. And one of my theses was basically that even if people always come up with this narrative that the damage to the economy is more than the cause of the lives that we're saving. Even if that's true, it doesn't even matter. I don't know if there's an equation for, economic output to translate to lives saved. It's kind of like apples and oranges. But even if there was an equation, the politicians that favor the economic situation are just not going to win, because people are going to be dying in hospitals, and that's always going to trump, what humans value in terms of importance, which is why I was saying that I think we're not going to see like massive reopenings of things, because people are going to increasingly demand that they're not going to support that, as hospitals fill up in their area.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. It's really tragic, but it's also fascinating.
Fascinatingly sad. Yeah, it's I'm looking. You have very, very, very well done, very, very nice, organized. So your website is, there's not many poker player backgrounds that have like nice, up to date website stuff that's getting done and articles and things. So yeah, guys, check that out for sure. Tell us a little bit about your beginnings in poker, even like how you got into it. We're around the same, I think the almost exact same age, within it's a year. I'm born in 86. So we're around the same kind of poker boom time.
Yeah.
Like, you remember, how you first got online, and also I want to know how your family reacted to you playing poker for a living. Was that something they were supportive or not? So tell me a little bit about how you first, did you see on TV? Was it a friend brought you to it? How did you start?
Fair enough. Okay, so I'll go back to the beginning. So I was 16. I got invited to a friend's house to play Texas Hold'em because Chris Moneymaker had just won the main event. It was 2003, and Hold'em was booming, and so I got invited to this guy's house that I was friends with, but he was friends with other people that I wasn't as close with, and these were kind of like the cooler kids in school. And so I sucked at sports, and I was in musical theater, and I didn't make the freshman basketball team, and I dropped out of football and all this stuff. So it was cool because I went there and I won my first time playing. And like they say about any gambler, the worst thing that could happen, or in my case, I guess the best thing, is you win your first time, because then you're hooked, right? So I won, and I beat these other people that were any other situation they would beat me in. But because we were playing this card game, and it was probably mostly luck that I won. I wasn't good at the time, but I thought I was good. But anyway, I won at this game. And so that was really exciting for me. And I just fell in love with poker.
Yeah.
And, I started reading Super System and all the books I could. And,
I got to look here just because this is honestly, I'm going to go. I think this is podcast number 56. We'll go through your Hen and Mob sort of stuff as well. I know you have a cash game kind of bigger background. And
yeah, you're not going to find as much on Hen and Mob as you would.
But I do want to point out, just because I do this every time, I swear, out of 56 people, their first ever Hen and Mob cash is a final table. It's just automatic. If you look here, I mean, you have actually a lot of pretty deep runs or early on in some of these tournaments where it's kind of crazy that you're, again, it depends on the field size. And of course, everyone doesn't cash their first ever tournament because it doesn't show if you don't cash. But the fact that your first actual cash is a final table, I just find that kind of interesting. I wonder if there's anything to that where guys are it just like it gets you kind of hooked to hit that like final table, right? Like early for a score.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
I mean,
I see that. It's honestly like 50. I would bet 50 plus of my guess. Well, 98% of my poker guess, because some aren't poker, but have final, like their first hand and mob is a final table, which I just find it kind of bizarre. Like,
yeah, it's true.
Like,
and so I was 19 at the time. I was in college, and I had qualified for that event. And it was actually during my like semester break. So I felt that I can go to Aruba, play the event, and then come back in time for school.
Right.
And we were only allowed to miss 3 classes, but I wasn't expecting to make the final table. So I made the final table, and I missed like, I had to stay through like an extra couple days. And so I missed my flight. I couldn't get on the next flight. And so I missed enough school. When I got back, I got dropped from a lot of my classes. But like that experience of like going, it was a WPT at the time. It was a huge event. It was televised.
This is the first one, the 5K you're saying in 06 or no?
Yeah. I played one other tournament before that, I think, that I qualified for, but this was my second like major live tournament. And my first live tournament was in the Bahamas that I qualified for while I was there. So I went with a friend who qualified online, and I played that event while I was there. So yeah, this was, really early on for me. And I had a few of these events happen to me early. Like I won my first time playing. One of my first tournaments I played online, I turned $30 into near like $2,500 in my first deposit online, or my second $50 deposit.
What was your first site?
Party Poker. Amen. All day.
Me too as well. It's kind of funny because it really was. They were those games were insane. Like the early days, I remember being in college, it was just crazy. Like guys were, 6 max cash. It was like 8 off was like full buy-ins all in pre for however many blinds. Like it was just.
When did you get into online in Party?
It was in high school. I was sophomore in high school. I remember a friend sending me $50. They had those bonuses where it was like send 50. If you sign someone up, they get 50 and you get 25 when they play 120. I actually built my sort of bankroll and got going was the affiliate business.
Oh, me too.
They had those, like, they would give you these bonuses where it's like, all right, you get this month, you get like $2,000 if you sign up 10 guys. And then the next month they'd be like, we'll give you an extra $2,000 plus whatever. So there's months I was making like $6-8 in college from just like, I would sign up 30 people in the dorm, send them $50 each. And then I would get all the bonuses plus, they would release it, and it was crazy. It was my whole like freshman year of college. That's what I was doing, was signing up.
That's what I did too. I did the exact same thing. I literally went door to door, and I just made accounts for people. At the end of the month, you got paid. Plus, I would make money playing poker. Yeah, wow, we have the exact same.
That's literally what I did my freshman year of college, and then so that was crazy time. So you were there right at the
right there, man.
What stakes were you playing then on Party at that time? Were you playing like 25 cent 50, 1-2, or just whatever? Like,
no, I was playing. Like, I remember the day that I was in high school playing 2-4, which was the biggest game online. And I remember the day that they opened. No, I was playing 1-2. Excuse me, which was the biggest game online. And I remember the day they opened, and it was the same day they opened 2-4, 3-6, and 5-10. And I was still in high school. I logged into Party Poker in the morning just because like I would like log in obsessively and just check the games or whatever, even though I wasn't going to play. But I logged in that morning, and I saw there were new tables for 2-4, 3-6, and 5-10. So I called my friend Ryan. I was like, dude, there's high stakes games. We got to do school and go to the internet cafe and go play. So I went to school. We signed in for first period. We did school, went to the internet cafe and played 2-4 and 3-6, which was above our bankroll, but we did it anyway. But that was in high school. And then, in college, I was playing around those stakes too, depending on how much I would win and lose. Didn't have the best bankroll management. So
I remember I went to University of South Carolina, and I played soccer there. And I remember like study hall I remember laptop. Like I got my first laptop, like going into college, and then, going there and bringing it. I remember having it in classes and playing like Party online, and just like, it was just like crazy, man. It was just like, it was the coolest thing to play poker in college. It was really fun. Where did you go to school?
Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, you went to SMU. Cool. Yeah, we played. They were in our conference for soccer. I went there a few times, and I had some friends there. That's How was that, being on campus life and playing? Were you playing like every day? Was that like?
Oh yeah. Playing? I didn't even go to like some of my classes at all.
Was it very? Were other friends or people there? Was poker like popular in college, or were you one of the only ones playing it?
it honestly, like, it was more popular in high school. I guess because I was so plugged into the community that like everyone that I was friends with in high school was playing. And then like we would play against other people in other high schools. So it felt like there were more people in high school, whereas college was more like siloed and people thought it was like kind of crazy. And like,
right.
There were a couple people playing, but not really, man. I felt like I was really on my own in school.
Did your in high school, did your parents know, or people like, were your family, your brothers, sisters, or?
No, I had stepsister. No. So, and my parents knew that I was playing, but I mean, healthy dose of caution. They were like supportive insofar that I was like, okay, I had money saved up that I was using and I made my own money. I had a flyer delivery company where I pass out flyers to make my own money. So I used my own money to play poker, and they were like, we're not giving you any money, no allowances, which I was like, totally fair. They don't want money going to gambling, which was fine. But they were like supportive, but then like, clearly like you have to make this like just a side thing and school has to be the priority. And rather supportive when I dropped out of college, which I was 18 at the time. And
so what year, how many years of school were you in? You were what, first year?
Yeah.
3 months. You dropped out right away.
So I decided to drop out, and then I was like, I'm going to take the rest of the year off. I had this party poker affiliate business. I was doing very well with that.
I wonder if he was the same guy, because I was like, I had the whole, I forget his name. I would know it if I saw it. But I remember those like Mike Sexton cards. Do you remember those little the Mike Sexton affiliate things? Yeah, I had the whole packet, and
totally.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's literally the same thing, exact same thing I was doing, because they gave those crazy bonuses.
Dude, the bonuses
like 6K bonus some months. Like if you hit a certain number of more than the month before, it was really insane. I mean,
I even had sub affiliates, so I had affiliates under me.
Bro, listen to what I did. My freshman year, I lived in a dorm with 4 guys because we played in the soccer team. So there's 3 other guys in my room, right? After our freshman year, I ended up giving them, I showed them the model and I gave them all money in their account. And it was 20%. I remember
exactly
20%. And I sent them all like 5K, and I said, here, sign up 20, 30 people, do this as your mission. And they literally signed up 20, 30 people each. I did my stuff. And then we went to Cancun for our spring break, like for that year. And we were all in the same thing. And it was all from party poker, affiliate deals. It's exactly.
Bro. We had the same exact thing. So I bankrolled my subs and I taught them the model. And then I took 20% and they paid me the 5K back. And I did the exact same thing. Yeah. So we had the exact same. Dude, we're both on the
the affiliate business in poker, it's been around for a while, and it's gotten different, but it's still very prevalent, a very prevalent thing. So you had a solid role. At what point were you saying do you think you played more, or were you focused more on that side of it?
I was like sort of 50-50 at a point where I was like, my passion, all I wanted to do was play poker. But I mean, I had a month where I made 20 grand, 30 grand. I don't remember, but I mean, I had a month where I made a lot. And this was before they shut it down. But yeah, like I was making so much that I had months where I made more on the affiliate side of thing. And also it was like kind of easy money, because at some point I had like people signing up because they had my link and I didn't even know where they got it. And I had people like my sub affiliates where I was making like 5-7K a month from subs doing nothing. And I was like, this is insane.
What happened was they changed it, because they were like, they looked at it and they were seeing these bonuses and the signups, and then the people wouldn't play. Like they would give you them the 50, you the 25, or you the 50, them the 25. And then what would happen is then they basically moved it to the MGR, where they were like, they want it to just be like a piece of what the player is playing.
The rake,
which generally is better, but not in these scenarios where you're signing up people that don't know how to play poker. And
sometimes I would send people, I would sign them up and then I would send them the $50 because like I would make 200. So I would just bankroll everyone. And then at the end of the month, I'd get this huge lump sum. And so like these people weren't even playing, or they were like college kids that didn't even know about poker. And they would be like, how do I play? And I would just, they would play for like 20 minutes, lose their $50 and be like, oh, I don't care. This is fake money.
They had to play 125 raked hands. I remember that was
exactly
that was the unlocking. But yeah, man, crazy time. So all right, well, that's very interesting. It
is crazy, dude. We could talk about this forever because I'm sure we have so many. I'm sure we both have so many stories because we've lived this for years. But anyway, back to my parents. They were supportive because they saw that I was playing poker and that I took poker very seriously and I was making money. And they also saw that I had this business, and I think that business really helped legitimize the poker side of things too. And they saw that I was like 50-50. And then I ran it like a business. I mean, I had sub affiliates. I had like monthly revenue. And so I'm really lucky because I think having supportive parents is super important, especially at that point in your career. When you make a big life decision like that, I'm really close with my family too. And so, that was luck.
Yeah, it's for sure. That was definitely the right place, right time. Let's look here at your Hendon Mob though. So you get in, you go through poker, you score, you get this package, you go down there. What was that like, final tabling? Because I mean, look at, 8th place, crazy difference in payouts. I mean, so top heavy in this one. Look at the legend Cliff Josephie, Johnny Backs there as well. But do you remember this? Do you remember this? Some other?
Oh yeah. I remember all the hands, and I could have played one hand different too. Anyway, it's not that important. But basically, I got 8th, where first place was a huge amount. But if things go one way different, you could win and whole thing. I got lucky to get 8th. But I remember because it was like this huge event. It was like a WPT at the time, and also like all these people who I had read about in forums or I had chatted with in a forum, or that people said, like Johnny Backs, Cliff Josephie, most people probably know him more recently because of the main event final table, but this guy was a legend at the time.
Yeah,
he's always been a legend.
He had a stable of what, like 100, 200. I mean, they're putting everybody on.
But he was like widely considered the best online tournament player in the world at that time. Like Johnny Backs was like the best tournament. So now I'm like 18 years old. I just dropped out of college, or maybe I was 19 at the time, because I actually went back to college a year later for a semester. This might have been my second time back to college. I'd have to think about it a little more, but at 18 or 19. And I'm like, now I'm at a final table of a televised live event, like with the guy who's like the best ever. And like, we played pots where we're in hands and we're like reading each other. And it's like, so, I mean, it was like super impressionable to have this happen, and then also at this event, at the first event I went to in the Bahamas and this event in Aruba, there were like the scene of other elite online players that you had either chatted with online or you were on the forums with, and you got to meet all these people in person. Right. So I was like, I remember Andrew Roble and I were like hanging out at Aruba, and we were like friends at this point because we'd met in the Bahamas, or Tom Dwan or David Benefield. Like I'd seen these people and we like talked, and like these people became, huge at poker. And like to see other people that had dropped out of school, like I think Benefield dropped out of TCU, don't quote me on this, but Roble had dropped out of school, and like other people like Tom like had like, were doing this, and like Tom and Dave were living together in Texas, and like this whole thing where like people were actually doing it and seeing other people, that gave me so much confidence. And then of course I win 40K, and I'm like, I could do this. So
you were at Echelon, and you kind of went through there. And I see, it's funny to look back on some of these tournaments and see some of the names and some of the guys that are still in there, and just, it's wild. There's not that many people that have withstood in poker the test of time, or are still in it, or do something, kind of similar to poker. So, you are, how many years now? So you've basically been playing 16 years, right in there?
17 years. Yeah. 17. I just turned 33. So
what would be your message to someone that is that's sort of like looking right now? Because obviously that was like sort of the golden time of poker, and now there's some states that are coming on. Michigan, big one, Pennsylvania, some serious traction. Sports betting legalized at a federal level. It's a big deal, state by state. Some stuff piggybacking on with that, and likely online poker will follow suit. What would you say to someone who's thinking about getting into poker and doing it for a living now? How would you give them some advice versus maybe back when we started?
In terms of like whether or not they should do it, or what their approach should be once they've decided?
Let's say
there's kind of like two questions.
Kind of if they're young, like they're in their young 20s, they're maybe they don't have a relationship or married or kids, they're looking for something to do as a strong side hobby or supplemental income. What would be some advice you would say to someone who wants to try to break into the poker scene, to make a living playing?
I would say that like it's a young person's game, I think. And I think you can break in at 40 if you want, but to dedicate your life to poker, I think is a young person's game. And I think you're at the perfect stage to do it if you're young. But I think you also have to like be responsible, and you have to like allocate your money properly and have really good bankroll management. I think that's probably the most important thing, because you can be the best player in the world and go broke. And I think what you're going to realize if you're starting out in your 20s, that one day you might always want to play poker, but you might not want to have to play poker. And even the percentage of the people that play poker and reach the top and that are amazing players, not that many of even those players, right? So we're talking about the 0.01%. Not even that many of those players are what you would consider a lifer, meaning they don't want to always play poker. They leave poker, and you see this happen with even people like Fedor's quitting and Nicholas Heinecker and like people that reach the top. So there are some people that are lifers, but there's some people that aren't. So I think poker is great because it teaches you a lot of like life skills, but then you also maybe consider how you're going to translate those into another side hustle or another business long term. And I know that's kind of thinking ahead of time, but maybe going all in on poker now is good to help you figure out to get to live an awesome life, and you could travel and make money and work on your own, and it could provide a great lifestyle. But then also to be thinking about the future and basically realize that the money that you save or make playing poker is the leverage you're going to be able to use to give you options in that future activity. And even if you don't know what that is now, realize that it will very likely be there, even more so exponentially growing if you have a family or wife and kids.
Yep.
And so save as much as you can. Don't make silly decisions with your money. Be very frugal and give yourself as many options to buy yourself time to not have to work, because you're going to need to spend 6 months to a year building your next hustle, done poker, but you haven't succeeded at that other thing, or you need money to invest in whatever project, most likely a combination of both the things I just said, but you need money to invest in that project. So I would save as much as possible and don't do dumb shit with your money, and go for it. Have fun.
All right, I liked it. That's definitely good advice, and I think that it's easier said than done. But I think if you do look at the most talented players in the world, or the top of the game, if you were to be able to back or select or be a part of someone's journey, I think it's safe to say, and what I hear you saying, and I utter the same sentiment, that it's not necessarily the most talented or best player. If you start looking at bankroll managed, discipline, vices, work ethic, those type of things, you could go down pretty far down the list and select someone that's going to be able to win and be successful than the top 3 player in the world or top 10, who's going to go broke, who's going to make bad decisions, who's going to be, different, all types of things. You can really go ahead and it's like an athlete too, right? It's like you could find the most talented athlete in the world. If he's lazy, his work ethic's not there, bad attitude, not motivated, these type of things. It's not going to be, it's not the guy you want, right? To be your franchise player, to be someone you want to back or endorse. You would go pretty far down the list to find someone that would be a better fit than that. So I think it's a good way to look at it. Let's go over here to the Hendon Mom 2 with a tournament result. This is like, so you weren't really, you were playing some tournament poker, but you do get to the World Series 10K heads up event. It's one of the more fun events each summer. A lot of entries in this one. That's a crazy amount for the 10K. I think they usually get like 100, 130 now max at these last few years. And usually there's,
this is when poker was really booming, 2009, 2008.
That's a crazy amount of rounds, man. A 453 person heads up. I mean, how many? I'm trying to even think. I guess there's buys, 128, 256, and then even like most of the people playing in the round after that. So, I mean, that's a lot of matches.
8 rounds. Yeah.
How many days did this take? This must have been like 3 full days.
3 days. Yeah. And I think you played like 2 matches a day, and
damn,
there was
so close.
11 a.m. and a 4 p.m. Yeah.
So you got second to Kenny Tran. How was that? How was that experience playing heads up?
It's like the best worst result to have, because you're obviously the second happiest you can be financially, and like over time you accrue that pleasure of having the money. You have the options that the money brings you. You can move up in stakes, you can play bigger games, you can buy into more tournaments, do all the things you can do with the money. But also, like, the emotional side of it is like the hardest to handle is the second place finish, because you're the closest to first place. So like if you get last place in a tournament or you bust A1, I've done many times, you're not like, you don't feel any emotion around that bust, right? Like it's easy to kind of like let one roll off of you, because you're like, well, I didn't have a chance anyway. So
it wasn't close.
But getting second in the 10K heads up, or later that summer, I got 4th in I think it was a 15K World Poker Tour at Bellagio. Don't quote me on the timeline. It might not have been that summer. It might have been the summer after, or in the 40K, I got 6th. That was later that summer, I think. Right? Later that summer. No, that was 2009. Sorry. So the 40K was 2009, and then later that summer in 2009, I got 4th in the Bellagio World Poker Tour. And like those are the finishes that really stick with you because, you know, I replay the hand in my mind that was the difference between me getting fourth and losing a coin flip to the guy that got first. And there were hands against Kenny that could have won other ways too. That, you know, just I replay those in my mind even to this day. And that was like, you know, a decade ago, just because, you know, it could have been a first place finish. And obviously I got super lucky to get fourth. I could have lost the hand that allowed me to get fourth. So you can take it one standard deviation back. And I'm really grateful for the win. And I don't begrudge my luck ever.
Yeah, that's a crazy.
Emotionally, it's harder to deal with.
That's the crazy thing about tournaments too, right? Because it's so often it's like you don't even think about it. But when you go deep in a tournament, usually there were some suckouts or obviously winning flips or, you know, cooler situations. But when you get down to it, like you often just remember the last hand or like the last match or the last situation. You're like, oh, I can't believe that didn't go right or whatever. But it's tournament poker is very violent. It's very volatile both ways. You know, there's a lot of variance.
You have to realize that you shouldn't have been there to begin with because, like, you know, me to get fourth, for example, when there were 10 people left, I made a straight in a hand where I got paid off, and I might not have got fourth if I didn't make the straight, right? Making the straight is luck, right? I play the hand well? Sure, I played the hand well, but I still made a straight, right? So, like, there's and that could happen infinite number of times. Maybe I won a coin flip on day one for a third of my stack, got me parlayed up there. So I think people always have the tendency to like, oh, I got someone lucky to get fourth. It's like, no, you got lucky to get fourth, right? So I'm really grateful for that, all my tournament results. And I had a lot of good results in tournaments. I actually have like the results I have to the ratio I've played is really like I've done really well. And I'm not saying that to brag at all. I'm saying it because I've ran better than I probably, you know, I've ran very well in tournaments. I'm mostly a cash game player. So like actually I like for example, in the last 5 years, I've probably played like, don't quote me on this, but maybe like 5 tournaments. I don't know. I played the main event. The last 3 years, I think I've only played the main. I was living in Macau 2012 and 2015. I like literally didn't even go to Vegas for like 2 of the 3 summers I was there because there were the high stakes cash games in Macau that were like bigger than what was going on in Vegas. So like I didn't even play a tournament. So yeah, like I'm mostly a cash player, but
so
really great runs I've had in tournaments.
Cash or tournaments, you're cash for all day. Then obviously you're not really playing tournaments much anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Like I went through a period where I did them more because I was doing very well, and like also like media exposure side was different. So we got like endorsements, and I was like sponsored, and there was just like so much more connection to the tournament scene at that time. But yeah, I've always been like mostly cash for bread and butter. And I think I'm writing a piece on this about asymmetric bets that's coming out on alectorelli.com. It might be, well, you guys are watching this live, but if you're listening to a podcast, it might be out. But basically my point is that like when you have long shot bets and you have a very high risk, but a very high reward, those are great bets to make. Asymmetric bets, meaning you can risk a little and win you could risk a little and win a lot. That's a tournament, right? You risk 10,000, you could win 1 million. Those are great bets to make, and you should have a place for those bets. But it's also hard to have a business plan comprised of making asymmetric bets because you have to have very good bankroll management, and you also have to have an extremely long sample size to be able to get in the long term to guarantee that you're going to show a profit. Whereas cash games, it's a little bit more manageable. It's less volatile. You win 60% of your sessions. So the volatility being, a tenth of what it is in tournaments means that you don't have to, it's easier to reach the long run. It's easier to make it a stable career. Right. And again, like I've been in poker a long time, and I know some people do tournament careers only, and mad respect and credit to them. But also there's so much more variance. Especially if you do a live tournament career, you might not reach the long run in your variance. So you can literally play for 2 or 3 years and run below expectation. And like, are you going to keep throwing out $250,000 a year running below expectation? So if you're playing online, obviously you can get a huge sample size and whatever. But it wasn't really my pace. So I always kind of had like an 80% cash game roll and a 20% tournament roll. And so I had these asymmetric bets with an insignificant part of my bankroll where even if I lost it all, I can still thrive with the 80% in the cash game. So that was always my pace, but it's obviously individual.
For sure. Someone was asking about this. I saw this on Twitter as well. We're going to hit those questions. We do have a $55 Twitter giveaway courtesy of Party Poker. If you guys want to ask a question for Alec, we will do a giveaway at the end of the show.
Thank you guys for all your questions too. And if I don't get to your questions on Twitter, I was thinking about this. I would like to do something where I like took your questions and then made like little videos and put them on my YouTube, where it's like the good questions. I just like did an Ask Alec and threw it on my YouTube in a 3-minute response. So look for on my YouTube on ConsciousPoker for those if I don't get to your questions today.
Awesome. Well, yeah, there you go. So we'll try to get to a lot of those, but if not, Alec will answer a lot of them or go through it. And this moment, talking about a F-Tops win. So speaking about the online, because we're just looking at Hendon Mob and that's live, but you were playing tournaments for maybe a decent stretch or a fair amount. You fired a big series back in the day, and you had a big F-Tops win. What was that? What did you win? What was the event, and how did that affect your bankroll and trajectory?
Yeah, that was huge for me. I was in Australia at the time. I just dropped out of college. I think I just dropped out of college for the second time. So I think I was 19.
Same place? You went to SMU and then back?
I went back to SMU. Yeah. So I dropped out when I was 18 in October. I spent the whole year playing poker and whatever. I went back in the fall, and then I dropped out in December. Like I finished the semester and then dropped out. So I think this January, right, at the end of December, I went to Australia. And I decided to stay there because I loved it so much. I went there for the Aussie Millions. I decided to stay there. So I got up one morning. It was like 4 a.m. in Australia. And I'm like, I'm going to play this F-Tops thing. And it was the biggest tournament in online history at the time.
Started at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I think it was like, don't quote me. I think it was 4 a.m. Australia time.
Awkward. It wasn't the optimal time to start a tournament.
No, but it ended up being the optimal time because by the time it got to the final table, it was like 8 or 9 p.m. So I wasn't tired at all at that point. It wasn't 8 a.m. for me and I was exhausted. I was making all the best decisions when probably other people were tired, but I was like, oh, it's only 8 p.m. I'm 5+I, there's adrenaline and whatever.
Right.
So I ended up winning this tournament for $250,000 in a single day. And I was playing decent stakes online at the time, but this was $250,000. So I moved up to playing 25-50 on Party Poker. Shout out Party Poker, and the games were just incredible. And now I had the bankroll to play these games, and I just really, really crushed those games for a while. And then I was also playing online on Full Tilt, and that allowed me to move up as well and take shots in bigger games. Those shots did well. I parlayed that up, and in 2007, I won a little over $1 million on Full Tilt. I was one of the biggest winners online that year. So that all happened because this domino effect happened because I won that tournament. If I didn't win that tournament, I couldn't have won that million. So
looking back to winning that tournament,
huge.
Looking back to that, was that specific event where did you wake up and you were like, I'm playing this one event?
Oh, yeah.
Were you playing 4, 6, 8, 10? How many tables were you playing?
So what's ridiculous is I did multi-table tournaments. I was never like super crazy. I mean, I went through a period where I did like 9 tables on a laptop where I did the whole thing. But like that Sunday, I wasn't super crazy. I did play other tournaments. I played the Stars Million as well. I don't know if it was called the Sunday Million then, but I played the Stars Sunday Million. What's crazy is I actually got to like top 50 or 70 in the Stars Sunday Million, and I got it all in with kings to aces and lost. So I was deep in both of these things, and I'm like, holy shit, like I'm like, this is insane. But then as the day went on, like I was only 2 tabling for like half the day because I was, doing so well and focused. And, but yeah, that was a crazy Sunday.
Yeah. I feel my biggest scores have been when I play like a couple tables or for whatever reason, I was only playing 1 or 2. I mean, I don't know. It's just, obviously it makes sense, right? You're focused, you're dialed in. And also it's actually that much bigger of an advantage because a lot of the guys are playing. It's like 6, 8, 10 tables.
Everybody is online. I mean, all the pros are, but think about it. Think about like one spot where like, you don't even think about it because you're playing autopilot poker when you're playing 8 tables. So like everything people don't think they're making any mistakes, and maybe they're not making mistakes, but what they're also not doing is finding opportunities. And so for example, let's say like, your opponent opens and someone calls and you just fold because you're like, you're just clicking buttons, you fold your cards. But what if you were only playing 2 tables? And maybe it's the timing of the speed that the guy called, or maybe it's just because you've been paying attention a lot and you notice that there's a dynamic between these 2 players. And so one of the guys' calling range is weaker than you think it is. And so you 3-bet now, or you 4-bet now. Yeah. When you wouldn't normally do that, but because you're paying attention.
King 10 or ace 3 suited in this trivial spot, it looks like, but really it's like the perfect squeeze spot.
It's a perfect squeeze spot
every time. It's going to give you credit, and like doesn't matter. And the stack sizes are perfect.
Exactly.
You're handcuffed where you're just like missing that every time you're 6-8 tabling. You're just never going to take it, you know? So yeah, it's interesting. It's a fine line, right? I guess it depends. And it's sort of like, all right, if you're going to play like one major buy-in, or do you want to play a lot of different ones? And it's just kind of, it's hard though. It's hard to put your eggs in one basket. If your day is a Sunday and you play a tournament for 6 hours and you bust and you have 0 extra backup. So
I don't blame you.
It's a formula, but I agree.
I've always felt like there's the sweet spot though, where there's like diminishing return and it just like kind of drops off a cliff. And I feel like the real sweet spot is probably like, 3 tables, but I usually play 4. And if I play 5 or 6, I regret it.
Yeah, and that's something I've noticed, and I just pick up or talk to people and also see, it's like there is a way to really organize, especially if you got like a second monitor. You can have like the lobbies up. You can see like, all right, I'm playing these 4. If something goes wrong, I'll look at this, or I know late reg is in this. It's a turbo. It's kind of whatever. I'm just going to like flick it in.
Or you're down to 10 big blinds. So you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to late reg this tournament if I bust,
Yeah, there's people, I think that, because it's like trading or anything. There's certain edges and ways to optimize. Like there's certain little advantages or tricks that like guys, there's guys like Mormon, or you look at B Paris, or some guys that have 10 million plus, or the biggest online crushers, or
they're doing something that other
doing
people
something different. There's an order of the buy-in or the phase of the tournament. They move their screens and they know,
Dude, there's all the little things. Yeah.
It's, you got to find ways to separate yourself. But yeah, man. So tell me a bit before, because I want to take a lot of the questions. Tell me a bit about what your prediction hypothesis is about the U.S. on gaming and coming back. Do you believe that the U.S. will have poker in a bit, or do you think that this is like another 5-10 years or won't happen, or do you think in a year or two that we'll see New York, these other states follow suit, and things are going to kind of just come back together? I mean, just to go off on a tangent, I a few at once, but do you also feel like, do you think that this potentially, like, let's just say you're right, or it's like more on that side of 12-18 months? I mean, casinos can't be out of business for 12-18 months, the Wynn and the Encore and these different companies and stuff in states, like there's like businesses that maybe have to adjust or shift to like the market, and maybe online poker, could be one of those that sort of the cross, the intrastate kind of sharing or pooling or other laws that are close, they push it forward and they say, look, we need it. Like, I mean,
this could be the leverage point for passing something, and whether it should be passed or not is less relevant to the fact of what will happen. And that's what I've tried to focus my content on, is separating what I think is the right thing or what should happen for what will actually happen. Because people don't behave rationally. You've seen that in the markets. The VIX is at 60. I mean, people aren't behaving rationally. So the point is that this could be a leverage point for casinos to pass online poker and for politicians to accept that as a form of revenue. Is it likely? Probably not. It's probably not the highest point of their priority, but that's definitely a way that this does play out. And it is leverage for the casinos. Needless to say, in a moment where people can't leave the house, bringing the experience online is just an obvious sort of like 1-2 punch that I'm sure they're exploring. They have a lot more incentive to do now. And that it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I do see, so I'm not sure about a timeline. And one of the things that's tough about, investing or whatever it is you can have the narrative right and the timeline wrong, and you might still be wrong. So I'm not sure about the timeline of all this, but I do see an eventual legalization of online poker, just because like, it's just kind of like the marijuana argument. Like, is it right or wrong? That doesn't matter. Is it going to eventually be legal in all 50 states? Yes. When is that going to happen? I don't really know. I just know that will happen. The thing is, though, that just because the reason that this will happen, by the way, is just because the collective psychology is eventually going to move that direction. Just like it was inevitable that we were going to ban slavery, we were going to give rights to African Americans, we were going to give rights to women, we were going to give rights to gay marriage. Those things are all inevitable going to happen. This is also inevitable going to happen because this is the direction, this is the trend. You don't swim upstream on the current, right? So I don't bet against the inevitable happening. When will it happen? I don't know. And what is the real question is like, what is the viability of this as a revenue stream for people wanting to play poker if it's siloed state by state? And the answer is, unfortunately, it's not going to be that great. If your player pool is limited to state by state, what are you going to have professionals moving to Kansas because there's a fish? I mean, it's just like you need a large player pool. You need everyone to play together. So you need interoperability between the states. And I don't know about that. That's kind of like the last thing I see happening, unfortunately. And also you need all of the states on board for it to happen. So the best thing to happen would be if they just nationalized it, legalized it everywhere, and had everyone playing. But I just unfortunately see it as more being a state by state.
Even now, it's like all these things, and we're not in on, I don't know the exact policy, and I have some friends and lobbyists and whatnot, but it's kind of tricky too. A lot of stuff gets done. There's meetings, people come together, they talk, they vote, there's set times and things. And now it's just kind of like everyone's, what are they going to do? Like, all right, let's get online, let's get on Zoom and talk about it. I mean, I guess that's like, eventually there's the lawmakers and the different things are going to have to adjust, right? I mean, things are
what happens in the UK. Boris is in ICU. I mean, you can't. That's real, right? These are talking about the 6th largest economy in the world, and the president's in ICU. I mean, like, you can't. Right. I mean, it makes sense for the lawmakers to be. Look, they're also all. I mean, let's be realistic. They're also all the most at-risk group, right? These are just the facts, right? They're old. They're older people. So like. Right. And who knows what pre-existing health conditions they have, because they don't make that public, right? So I don't know, but I know that they're the highest risk group. It does make sense to defend against these sorts of things, right? And then when you see that this is happening in other parts of the world, I mean, America. I love the U.S., but they have this belief that like things can't happen here because we're America, right? But like, which is, I think, is part of the reason why people have been a little cavalier about the whole thing, because it's like, oh, that's happening in Italy, that's happening in China, that's happening in Korea, but
oh, we have better healthcare, we have better this, it's going to be fine. But no, like, there's numbers.
Look at New York, they're building a hospital in Central Park. I mean,
it's wild times.
It's wild times, man. But anyway, I'm not sure about the poker thing. What do you think? You're almost certainly know more about this than me.
I mean, I think the Pennsylvania, Michigan, those type of things are big deals, right? That's shows really those are important states. Those have bigger populations and money, more of the powerful states. So I think obviously we hear California is the key state. That's the one where it's like would be the 3rd largest country if it was legalized in terms of players and what it would do. Like what the state alone would be as big as some of the major contributing countries. So California, New York, Florida, if those states get activated, throw Texas in, which I think is an unlikely one, but like Florida, California, New York. I think New York's not that. New York's most likely. If that happens, that's major news too. It's like one of those to state that like everyone in the country is going to look and be like, oh, why are we not doing this or whatever? Because like now Pennsylvania, they get the tri-state, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York. I think then you got a business. Like if New York comes on board, then things are gonna, I think, go pretty quickly. And I don't think that's that crazy.
You also have there's 2 things here, and the first is that like, why couldn't there be interoperability with the states and then them basically prorating the rake taxes based on the VPN? Like that this is possible. This isn't like crazy talk, right? Like you can have, we have 60% of the players, 60% of the hands played on this global or this national poker site are coming from California. Therefore, we're going to distribute 60% of the revenue to them. I mean, that just seems possible. Right. But the other problem here I see is that, like a lot of things, these conversations become politicized. And so you have the right thinking one thing and the left thinking another. And again, independent of who's right and wrong, you have states that lean towards one political party. And so clearly online poker is going to be harder to pass in more conservative states, right? Because it's gambling, it's against, there's the religion aspect of the whole thing. Yeah. And so you're going to have states that are resistant to this, independent of the fact that there's tax revenue, and the politicians are resistant because the people are resistant, just like they are to perhaps things like gay marriage and marijuana and other things, right? So it's going to take longer for those states to come on board, even if there is revenue opportunity, or even if one person thinks it's logical, right? There's the politics here, and then
even if you could pour in, like you're saying too, if New Jersey, for example, which Party Poker's in, Stars, the other 888, like the sites are there, WSOP, and they're booming the revenues and whatnot, which is going to be skewed, of course, because of this COVID-19. This is, the numbers online are up everywhere, crazy numbers and everything that's booming. But if those states could pour into the overall pool, like, why can't you just put the New Jersey, if you even got the states that are allowed in the US to go into the shared, like regular pools, like that would be a big deal, because then people would move there. Like if you could pick 5, 6, 7 states and now those feed into the overall like pool, the sites, then now you're going to actually have a huge boom, because people are like,
especially if you have I'm not going to state like California.
yeah, I'm not going to move to Canada or Mexico full time, but you know what? If I live in New Jersey or New York, I could go over to New Jersey, or if I'm in Connecticut, I'll go to New Jersey, or if I'm in, whatever, I'll get there. Yeah. Like it's worth it for me or to try it. And I think that would make like a massive difference.
Also there's this like self-fulfilling situation, right? When you have an economy of or an ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, of 1,000, right? And you don't have the opportunity to play certain games because you can't 5-table, right? You can't 6-table. You don't have games at all hours, and you don't have the flow of traffic. So then you play less poker because you can't play on your own schedule. It becomes humans are creatures of habit, right? If you have access to something all the time, you'll do it more often. You'll make it a part of your life. Yeah. And that's a function of the amount of people that are in that environment. So when you nationalize something, you bring these player pools together. What does that do? It creates more traffic. So you have one of the reasons why I'm sure you and I can both relate. We played so much party poker is because I could log in anytime, any day of the week and find a game. And so when you have these player pools that build together, you can then have that reality. And then people make poker a bigger part of their life. They pay for training sites. They play more poker because of that.
Well, you have to have liquidity. You want to play a $20 sit and go. I want to play a 25-cent 50 cash game. A guy wants to play a multi-table tournament. It doesn't work. You got to have enough people wanting to be aligned and do the same thing.
So when you silo things in a small state, I mean, it's harder to have regular games that are varied enough and big enough to attract a lot of people and for them to leave money on the site and make poker a real thing. So I hope that happens. Do I think it's going to happen? I think we have a ways to go, unfortunately. Right.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we're looking here again. You have different sites. You got the Instagram, you have the Twitter, you got a website, you've got a lot going on. Tell me, I want to check quickly your wife, who has a very successful Little Bites of Beauty. She's got a very, very cool page, and we've met, had dinner before with my wife and your wife. And tell me a little about her and how you met, and how does she support you in poker, and just, you guys are both doing social media sort of building brands and activity. So how does that work? Is that something you guys collaborate on, help each other with, or is it like, man, you guys are both so busy? Like, how do you find time?
Well, there's a lot of questions there.
So, I like to give 10 at once. That's my style.
You give me 10 things to pull from.
Yes. So don't blow it. You got a lot. Easy. You can choose any of it.
Well, we met. So I guess we could start with how we met, and then that'll give you a background of a little bit of who she is. So I moved to Italy when I was 24, and I wanted to learn Italian and discover my roots. My last name Torelli, obviously. So I was looking for a place to learn in this city I was staying in, which is a small town. I read about it in a book, actually a book that I read at Aruba during the tournament that I won. I read this book, and there was a cool town in Italy. I'm like, someday I'm going to go there and learn Italian. So this someday came, 5 years later. I was 24. And I walk into the office of the university looking for a classroom, a place, like some resource to learn. And I walk into the office of Ambra, and she's moving to the US to teach. And we agreed to do a language exchange, and that's how we met, and we got married after that. The rest is sort of a history. So she was a teacher.
How long did you get married? How long when you met?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
So we met in January of 2000. Sorry, let me think about the year. 2011, January 2011. We got married in February 2013. So we agreed to do a language exchange, and we obviously really hit it off. So she was moving to Florida. She was a teacher at the university, and she was moving to Florida to teach. And so, so that's how we met. And so she's super supportive, and she's amazing. I would not be anywhere near where I am without her in my career. She's been traveling with me the whole time, and helping me with everything, like from filming my YouTube videos to strategizing about whether or not we should play a game, or whether I was ready or not, or like all these things that go very unnoticed, but that are very integral to one's overall success. And if you graphed out my sort of like success in my poker career, there'd be like, Bitcoin's correlated to the stock market. You would see these two graphs, like when my wife came into my life, and like this whole thing. Right. So
positive force for sure.
There's a very big correlation coefficient there.
That's awesome. Well, that's great.
So she's a university professor. She quit a job, but she's written about travel literature and has a whole career that's not related to exactly like her brand that you see online, which is more of a lifestyle and food brand. So it's very interesting. She has a very interesting background, and she does a lot of writing about travel literature and things like that too. And she shares a lot of her content on Little Bites of Beauty, but you'll see a lot of food about there. But a lot of people don't know that about her background.
Nice. So you guys pretty
raising a lot of awareness too.
That's a crazy story. I met my wife at Burning Man. Pretty random and wild. And that's pretty wild. You went to a book that you had you read from Aruba from that tournament, or that time you saw the city, a random city in Italy, a small town. You went there and then walk into a room and meet your wife. That's pretty.
Yeah, it is crazy. The book is called Playing for Pizza by John Grisham, and it's a book about this American football player that goes to play football in Italy. And I was like, really cool. I was like kind of related to the protagonist because he was like, this athlete guy going to like take a break from his busy life in America. And I was getting fed up with things in Vegas. And I went to this, small town. And then, yeah, it's just crazy. We have a really crazy story. But yeah, she's great. She's raising a lot of awareness about what's going on in Italy. She posts amazing content on Instagram, daily stories about what's going on and how to be prepared. And it's really great. So if you want to follow along, she's great for that.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. Well, yeah, let's dive. We do have, so we've already been an hour and 20 minutes. We've got a lot of Twitter action going here. So there's a lot of questions. I don't even know. This is up there with some of the most. Let's just see here. We got, again, a $55 ticket. If you're watching live and you hear this, you could get over and ask a question, and then you will be eligible to win this at the end. But
yeah, guys, again, I'll try and get to your questions. Maybe make like short videos on my YouTubes for some of the best ones, or reply there. Thank you so much for all your questions. I did read and see all those. You guys are awesome. Yeah,
there is a lot of support and engagement, and I see a bunch of your loyal fans and people that engage in your community coming in. So we'll hit some of those real quick before we do go to the questions. Talk about a little bit about your coaching or what you do, or people that you have a network or a subscription, or what's your coaching scenario you do with people?
Yeah, so thanks for that. I mean, I started putting out a lot of content, and people were asking if I did coaching, and I just kind of like, it just evolved that way, where I really liked sharing poker strategy content, and then I started working with people, and I loved it. Like, it's really fun, and it actually made me a lot better of a player to work with other people as well. And so I work with a lot of aspiring players that are either looking to go full-time in poker or turn poker into a profitable side hustle. And usually it's right in that sweet spot where they're transitioning from, let's say playing, whatever, 2.5 to 5.10, or they're like, I want to make, $3K a month playing poker. Help me build a business plan to do that. And then, let's work together to develop the skills that I need to increase my hourly win rate to reach a certain metric to where I can play this many hours, excuse me, and reach that financial goal.
Right.
And maybe it's built around a lifestyle component as well. So I work with a lot of clients to do that. And that's really fun. I love doing that. And this is a great, it's tragic what's happening, but it's also a time that virtual coaching is something I've always done. And so it's a great time to do it because I'm at home, they're at home. And so they have more time to work on their game and study and play online or work through the lab and stuff. So I've been dedicating more time to that during this time as well. And then at ConsciousPoker, we have we have poker products that are available to help people improve at poker. We have free content. You can download my hand reading system, which teaches you how to hand read. It's my process that I use in all the hands I play to think about what my opponents are holding. It's a free PDF. And then we have a membership as well, where people can join like a community of other aspiring players and get, support on a weekly basis through new content. There's a group coaching call that's led by me, and then a Facebook group where I'm responding to all the comments and then picking the best hands and putting them in videos inside of our membership. So that keeps me really busy. And that's a lot of fun as well. And it's a great way to share the best content I've learned and interact with the community. And it helps support the content I'm doing in YouTube and the other stuff. So it's great.
Very cool. Well, let's dive over. If you guys want to know more, you can get a hold of, what's the best way for them, on the website to reach out or via the Twitter or website? What?
So it depends what you're looking for. If you want to just say, hey, and that you saw me here and whatever, Instagram, Twitter, say, hey. If you want more formal content that you're seeing, what is this guy talking about? What content does he produce? ConsciousPoker.com is probably the best place, or the YouTube at ConsciousPoker. So it just depends. But I'm very active on social media. I respond to all my own comments, also emails and stuff. So yeah, reach out, say hey.
Okay. Great. That's you guys heard it. You know where to go. Let's start. And it's like Italian week or month for me. I have Mustafa Knit on. We've got Dario Sammartino tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, we're just going through the Italian legends of the game this week.
Yeah, Dario's great.
We'll keep it going. How many failed deposits did you have before you had success? Do you remember? Like, was it your first one, never look back, or a few?
No, there were a few. And so like, it's hard to say because like for example, that first tournament I won, I put $30 on and I turned it into 2,200. That was maybe my second deposit, but then I busted that and had to deposit again. So like I had success intermittently with these deposits, but I would run up a bankroll and then lose it. I didn't have good bankroll management, even though I could win at poker. And so that's what ultimately caused that problem.
Yeah. I think it's also important to realize that poker is bankroll management, why it is so important, but a lot of players like yourself or myself or people that come from the beginning of time, it's not like we kind of only knew poker. So it's not like we were businessmen that started throwing money into poker and doing it. We basically built from like 50, 100, 200, 500, not a lot of investment to sort of move up the ranks or move up the stakes and whatnot, right? So it's like kind of interesting when you look at guys and people playing. You got to remember, like a lot of the poker players that have had success or built up, they generally, it's not like they were risking a 6 figures in money. They maybe started with a couple hundred.
18 years old. If you go broke, like I remember thinking about what was I going to do if I drop out of college, and I was like, okay, I'm 18, I have 20 grand saved or whatever it is. If I drop out of college and lose all this money, I'm going to be 19 with no money. I'm going to be the same as everybody else. Everybody else is 19 with no money. I mean, I'll be 1 year behind them in terms of where I'm at in my university, but like it didn't matter at the time. And also like you see these things happen now where like you see these guys do this bankroll challenge and whatever, like turn 100 into 10,000 or whatever. Like nobody, and I mean like nobody did that in 2003. Nobody was doing a bankroll challenge. Nobody knew what bankroll management was really. Like people were just kind of like punting around. Now if I was going to start over, see how it's because these people have learned, so we were not, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I'm pretty confident, even speaking to a lot of the people that were very good at poker and at the elite level at the time and were not very managing their bankroll the right way.
For sure. No, I think we've all, bankroll management is definitely a very,
you got to learn the hard way.
It's a strong skill to have. You got to have it.
Unfortunately, you really have to learn the hard way with that one. I really believe that almost everyone learns the hard way.
Yep. So that was Mark's question. What is the most memorable, Mark Lapina? Yeah. What's the most memorable hand you ever played? Do you have one that stands out where you're just like in a tournament or I don't know, for a cash game that was just like unbelievably memorable, like a great moment, or you got there, a huge pot?
Yeah, I guess I'll look. Yeah, all of those things. So I was playing in the big game in Macau, and the big game is a private game at a casino called Star World. So it's like an invite only game where these very wealthy Chinese businessmen host this game, and I was able to play a couple times, I was able to play often in this game. This is
like Robo, Trickett, Rast, Phil Lock during this era of like guys going over there sort of early with the Americans and the Westerners.
Yeah, those are amongst the short list that was played often in these games. And so everyone kind of had a turn in terms of like the VIPs like to play with different people. They got tired of, losing to the same people. And then they kind of like, if they liked you, you would be invited. And then when you were invited, you would like be invited during this period. So this was at the heat of my period of going to this game for a while. And so playing a very high stakes game. And I'm down 3 buy-ins. Okay. And 3 buy-ins in the game is a lot. And I usually have a 3 buy-in stop loss, but this game is like phenomenal and I'm playing very well. And different days, things affect you differently, right? Like some days you have a cup of coffee, you feel it. Some days you don't. Some days you have a glass of wine, you feel it. Some days you don't. This day I didn't feel the 3 buy-in loss. I mean, I felt it financially, but I was in the friggin' zone. And I knew that like I had a massive amount of EV. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do something I don't do, and I'm going to come back for the 4th buy-in. So I come back for the 4th buy-in. Buy-in's 4 million Hong Kong, which is divided by 7.76. So it's maybe like, I don't know, 500K US something like that. Maybe I'm doing my math wrong. Anyway, so there's a lot. I'm trying to do my math and tell a story at the same time, which is not a good combination.
Yeah,
anyway, so it's a large amount. So I get down to like 3.4 million, 3.6 million. Basically, like lose one hand or something. So it's right at the beginning of my fourth buy-in. The VIP opens. Okay, the blinds are 10K, 20K, 40K, or 20K, 40K, and there's an 80K straddle. VIP opens to like 250, 260K. And two people call, and the people that call like clearly have nothing, like just calling to play a pot with the VIP. They have like very deep stacks. And so I'm just like, the pot's 800K or so. And like, I have 3.4 million. I don't want to make it like 900K and then everyone's going to call because they're 10 million deep. And I know that's how it plays. I don't want to like, I have two tens. I don't want to just, play a four-way pot with tens and then like, I not know where I'm at. So I just jam. Okay. So I ship it in. And I'm like, if everybody folds, I'm like, whatever. I win a huge pot, no showdown. And if I get called by like, the VIP, like maybe it's not bad. So the VIP literally takes his stack. And if you've seen the stacks in Macau, there are these plaques, right? They're circular, they're square plaques like this. He picks up the stack of plaques and he stands up and he dumps it in the middle of the pot.
Almu said he can't wait. It might be bad news. Like even for him to be excited, it could be, it doesn't have to be aces, but it's not good to see that.
Your equity with tens is very low, right? Like you're always beat. So he stands, and this guy is like a stoic guy, smokes, a pack an hour, does not ever move. So he's and I'm like, holy shit, how do I get cooler? He has like a 40% opening frequency. The other two people fold, and he turns over Jack 7 of clubs.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I just thought that like he felt bad for me. I like literally talking to my wife. She was sitting behind me at the time. I was literally talking. I was like, after the hand, I was like, do you think he just like felt bad and just like wanted to like double me up and just like, I really think that's what, like to this day, I really think that's what happened.
Still a scary hand. It's never easy. That's not it's what
I'm only 2-1. I'm only 2-1 favorite, right? But I'm like, I can't lose this money. Like if I lose this money, I'm going back to the win and I have to like kind of grind it back, right? I can't just hop back in the big game. So I'm like, I'm going to have to like, I really need to win this pot. So he flops, this fucking guy flops a jack.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, like, how is this? I'm like, I never complain about my luck, but I'm like, this is ridiculous. The guy is trying to give me money and he like flops a jack. Like, this is so ridiculous.
You must have felt sick. You legitimately must have been like you were having a nightmare, right? Like,
yeah, like I normally am very stoic, especially in this game where it's invite only. I'm not going to like complain about my luck in front of these guys, but I made a facial reaction that was like, I was clearly not like, I was not that happy about this flop. So the turn comes a spade and there's 3 spades on the board and I have the 10 of spades. So these guys play baccarat and they love to sweat the cards. So they peel the sides of the cards to see if there's, what's called legs, meaning it could be like a 6, 7, or an 8 or a 9. And that tells them a certain thing about the card. And in baccarat, that's very important. So they put the last card down and they always do this sweating thing, right? Because they just love to do this stuff. So I'm like, no. And I never interject in the game or whatever. I'm always like quiet and let them do whatever they want. But I'm like, whatever. I'm stuck 12 million in the game. I'm about to lose my last fucking, buy-in in this game. I never play this game for a while. I'm like, let me have some fun. So I'm like Ambra, my wife sitting behind me. I'm like, well, Ambra, you need to sweat this card, right? You need to peel the card and the VIPs are going to show you how to do it. And you need to be a spade. And so now she's like, turns all red. She's like, what are you injecting me into this game? And I'm like, turning over this card for $10 million here. So she like peels the card and it's a spade. And like the whole table's going crazy. The VIP's laughing his ass off. Like he's like cheering for me at this point because it's like the scene is so ridiculous. Yeah. And so I go on a tear after this and like I win back. Yeah, I might have ended up the day down actually, but I won back like another buy-in or two. I might have ended the day up. I don't remember, but I ended up going on this upswing at this point over the next period that I was involved in the game. And it went very, very well for me. And it's like literally comes down to like, if I miss that card, like I wonder what would have happened, Yeah,
it's so crazy. Those type of things and big events.
There's so many things like that in poker.
Like and moments or satellites or gets you in a spot that you get to go or exactly a cash game, you take a shot in, do you run well or not? And I mean, a lot of life is it's funny too in tournaments in particular, where on a Sunday, for example, you're playing between, let's say 5Ks and $500 or $200 buy-ins. And it's like, the game's pretty much the same. Sure, the opponents might be tougher at the higher level, but like, you still got to win your ace, king to queens. King's got to hold the ace, king. These type of hands happen a lot, right? So it's like, where are you running the best at, or the variance in spots? So that's
like I've played let's call it 3 million hands of poker in my life. But how many of those hands did I play in the big game? Like, I don't know, 3,000. I mean, to 5,000, 10,000. I mean, it's like so small of a sample in comparison to how many hands I've played in my life. And it's like, you're not going to reach the long run in that big game. Like, I'm not going to get it all in with 10s to jack 7 30 times and realize my equity. You know, you're not going to flop your sets against aces, an even distribution, but like a lot of your, you know, you're taking a shot, and like a lot of your, you know, your career sort of where you are might be resulting on how you ran at those 5 final tables, you know, or whatever it is. And so, I mean, that's the game we play. You know, we're professional gamblers, and so got to run well where it counts.
For sure. Who do you think is the best best MTT live player today? Who you do a lot of videos, hand reviews. Just from what you see, is there any players that like you're super impressed with at the moment? I mean, a few names. There's obviously a bunch of guys playing at a high level that are on the high roller circuit. But is there anyone over the years or recently you've been super impressed with?
Man, I mean, I'm impressed with all of those guys, and I feel like it's one of those things. It's like on any given Sunday, like who's showing up and playing a little bit better that day, you know. And also, you don't see. You know, poker has to give you a scenario where you can shine, and it doesn't come up that often where you can really do something that's like very, very distinct in what you would do versus what someone else would do. Like, you know, you raise pre-flop with your strong hand. I'm not trivializing poker, but I'm saying like I don't watch enough of these streams or whatever and don't see enough situations. So I respect all of their games. They're all extremely good. I'm probably not versed enough in like everything to give the best opinion. I know that's not the answer everyone wants to hear. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I know it's true. I mean, it is hard to pick a couple.
I also feel like there's so many results-oriented scenarios, and I'm not taking away anything from the people that ran extremely well. I don't even want to call out names because it's just going to sound like I'm downplaying their results when I actually think the people that ran well probably deserve it to a large extent. But I'm saying like there's for every one person that ran extremely well, and that's, you know, everybody's talking about in that moment, there's 10 people that are probably near as good, maybe even sometimes better, maybe not quite as good, but that didn't run as well that nobody's talking about. Right. So I just think that poker is like unfair and to a large extent in that regard, especially in tournament poker. I mean, it's just like
it's true. You're right. How do you actually study poker yourself? Do you do solvers, PO work, any type of stuff, or how do you review and work on your game?
Good question. And, you know, it's funny. I actually probably, even though I've played like less poker in this period, I probably actually review more poker now because I'm creating content. So one of the things I do, there's a few things I do. One of the things I do for clients is I review hands with them during our coaching calls, but they'll send me all of the hands they play during a session. And if it's a live session, they'll send me 20 hands, you know, in a notepad. And if it's a online session, they'll clip together, you know, 5 or 10 interesting hands they played, and I'll make them a strategy video. So like when I make them a strategy video, I like literally have to like break down every single spot, every single hand. And so a lot of times I'll have to go into the lab. I'll have to like, you know, I'll give them my raw thoughts in real time because they like that, where I just record myself thinking about my thoughts in real time. And sometimes I end up not knowing the results and being wrong, but at least they see my thoughts. But then afterwards I'll break down the hand in the lab with them. And also I'll pull up Poker Cruncher or an equity calculator, doesn't matter which one really. And I'll run through the combos, the equities versus the ranges, and I'll go through the whole thing, and I'll think about, there's a lot more to it than that. I don't want to necessarily get into the weeds, but basically looking at different ways they could play the hand based on the odds of the equities versus the ranges and the math. And looking at like, you know, if this card comes on the turn, what would your equity be versus his range, and how would that dictate your strategy? Would you bet on these types of cards? Which cards gives you a range advantage and versus a nut advantage? And how do you counteract those two things? And how do you take exploitative play into account? So I do a lot of those things on my own because I have to for my clients, which helps me study. So I actually study more poker now because I have to. When sometimes when you're on your own, you have to force yourself to do it. You know, so I'm actually grateful for the membership and that sort of thing to keep me sharper than ever. But I also have, you know, really lucky to have a social circle in poker that I've been able to talk with over the years. And I think honestly, one of the biggest blessings of Macau was that, you know, we were all living in Macau. And so like, we're all kind of like traveling outside your comfort zone to live there. And like, what do you have to do besides hang out with poker players? And what do you talk about besides what you're spending 20 hours a day doing? So you talk about poker, and I got to talk poker with people that I thought were the best in the world. And then I think I learned from them.
What year were you there for? Like, what was the period of stretches you were there? Were you there for years, or did you like go and come back and whatnot?
Well, both, I guess, is the best answer. I was so we have visa limitations, so you can only stay for 30 days at a time. So I would only stay for 30 days at a time, but I had an apartment there for 3 years, and I would intermittently travel to and from Macau for a period of a month or sometimes 2 months when I would leave for a day and go to Hong Kong or Bali or Singapore, wherever, and then come back. And I averaged about 4 to 5 months a year in Macau over each year for those 3 years.
Was there who would you say out of that group, who was the catalyst to get the people over there? Who was like the first one who discovered Macau cash games? Because I hear different, a few guys going, but who was like the first who went over there, saw it, and then like told a couple friends, hey, you got to get over here?
I was one of the first people that was told, because I went over there like right when poker came around. I would say, Tom was there. He wasn't really telling anyone. And, Brian Rast was one of the first ones there. That's a name that everyone knows. I don't want to mention some of the other names because I'm not sure they would. I mean, Andrew Roble was there. Yeah. So, but I remember when there was this this like cover up where like because nobody knew in the West what was going on in Macau. So there was this cover up where it was like, Ras went over there, he beat all the VIPs, and now they say no more white pros are allowed, and like, white players can't go play in the casino anymore. But it was a public casino at the Wynn. So like you can still go play. And like maybe that was true about the big game, but that became kind of like the narrative about poker. And it was like obvious because when you discover the gold mine, you don't go tell other people you found it. So we were very secretive about Macau for a while because we didn't want to tell anyone that, we'd all been to the rodeo before. We'd all been to party poker and saw the evolution of poker over a period of time and how it goes from being, unbelievable to more difficult as people come. And we realized, on day one, I think we all realized that all the pros in the world are eventually going to come here because the opportunity is so great. And eventually the games are going to be more difficult. And that's exactly what happened. If you graphed out Macau over 3 years, it would basically be like online poker from 2003 to today. And you saw that happen in about 4 years, 3 to 4 years, while I was there. And so, in the beginning stages, it was insane, but nobody wanted to tell anyone, and nobody was talking about it. I wasn't making content at the time. I was very discreet about the content I was making. I wasn't making it, but the things I would say about Macau too, just because we didn't want anyone to know.
Right, makes a lot of sense. And
yeah, it's just too much opportunity.
For sure. And what's your favorite hand beside aces? What's your snapper hand? What's the one you just love to see and play?
Jack 10 of diamonds.
Make a royal with it just because it's got so much potential. What's your what?
I don't know. It's just always been that sexy hand. I remember one time in my home game when I was in high school, I was like, this is my hand and you don't mess around when I got my hand. Right. And so like I like re-raised someone and then someone called and then someone else re-raised and then I called and the guy back shoved. And eventually I was like, I knew that I was behind. And right. I knew that like wasn't getting the right odds, but I was like, I have Jack 10 of diamonds, and I said I would never fold it, and I kind of like felt a little pride about it, and so I was like, I'm going to make a point. And I called it off, and I broke aces with it, and so that like reinforced. I mean, I understand that one. I think that like you got that one in your arsenal. What are you speaking of Jack 10 suited and what do you think about short deck? Do you have any? Jack 10 of diamonds, not Jack 10 suited. Okay,
okay,
not
Jack
all
10
Jack 10s are created equal.
Okay, Jack.
There's like different equities with different Jack 10s. Okay.
All right, I get it. Everyone's got a favorite suit. That's good. What do you think about the new short deck explosion in the High Roller Triton series? Are you doing any work on that? Are you familiar with the game? Do you know how to play? What's your short deck? Experience?
Yeah, not a lot. I know it's boomed and it's huge and it blew up. I never got on the train really. Like I knew it was big. I saw it coming. But I just, it's like, it's one of those things where you have to decide, let's say, you can speak a couple languages and you have to decide like, do I want to learn another language? And in a game like poker, when, I'm like very proficient at a game, I'm not going to want to learn another game and be mediocre. So for me, it's binary. I'm either going to want to learn to the point where I can compete at the level that I'm competing at No Limit, or I'm just not going to learn. And so for me, I decided like, what, I've done a lot of what I wanted to do in poker, like me expanding more effort to be better as a poker player, to learn more games is going to take away from my ability to do other things that are meaningful and important to me in life. And so like, I just have to keep poker as that slice of the pie that it already is. And I just don't feel like I have more room to get great at another game that's going to take, a long, long time and require so much of me
Right.
at this point.
Makes a lot of sense. Did you ever have a point where you wanted to give up, or ever a really bad downswing where just like you were losing in cash games, things just got kind of out of hand, and you know, not like early on, but like once you had established a role and like, you know, cruising, things are all smooth and peachy?
Oh yeah. Actually, so this might be like not, I would say like in the beginning, I think everybody has that to some extent where you run up $1,000 and lose it and you're like, I'm never playing poker again, but you know, you're really playing poker again. But I actually, of course I had those things happen to me too, but I actually had like a real situation. So we talked about the F-tops. We talked about the $1 million year in 2007. It was, you know, very on the map in poker at that time. But in 2000, let's say like 2008, I did very well in tournaments. 2009, like one of these years, I have to think about more about when, because they all kind of blend together when you're playing poker and don't keep track of days. But I went on a huge downswing and like lost back, you know, a lot of what I had made. So I went on basically $1 million downswing.
Right.
But this was like deeper into my career. This was like talking about like 6 years after I started playing, and I'd already reached the top of poker. It's already like one of the biggest winners in the world. And then I go back down and I'm playing, you know, go back down to playing 2-4 and 5-10. I was playing 300, 600, no limit. I was playing 300, 600.
Looking at that, do you believe there was a bit of too much confidence? Do you believe you maybe too many tables? You were just kind of like, just not.
No. So, hold on. We have to be clear here. Like I had too big of an ego. I thought I was better than I was, and I played against people that were better than me, and I stopped studying and improving. There was like no excuse. Like I'm not blaming luck. Like I'm sure I ran worse during my downswing than I ran during my upswing, but like this was my fault. I got overconfident. My ego got in the way, and I made very bad decisions. So this is totally my fault. Deserved it. Had it coming. You know, you make a lot of money at a very young age, and reach, you know, the top of this industry that you've looked up to for a couple of years, and it goes to your head. It shouldn't have, but it did, and I had to learn the hard way. And since then, I fortunately learned a lot about that. And in Macau, I kept my feet more on the ground. It came out strong on the other side. But I really did go through this period where I was like, it was really, really, really hard for me to even play well and grind. You know, I had a situation where like my pre-flop raise was a buy-in. So I mean, like it was very hard to take the $1,000 or $400 buy-in seriously when it was a big blind in my other game or a pre-flop raise in my former game.
It's tricky to jump stakes and move around and play.
So I did not do well, and I really thought about, like, I really needed to take like a long period off before I got refocused. It was really tough.
Absolutely. Well, that's good. And what, talk a little bit about you have the YouTube channel ConsciousPoker, over 50,000 subscribers, very successful and built up. So you obviously you focus on the mental side a lot of the. Do you meditate? Do you have like a pregame ritual? Do you how much do you really focus on the mental side of the game and being you know, that type of preparation and be working out before you play, like that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a different like approach and like way that they anchor themselves to find, you know, their edge and strength or whatever. And for me, it's been largely a lot about that, the lifestyle side of things, where like eating well and exercising and kind of like preparing mentally. And that's evolved a lot over the years and what it's mean. And yes, you know, today I've been meditating for 4 years. So I guess that's more like rather recent in the grand scheme of things. But I've worked with like mental coaches in the past, and that's always been a very big part of my game. And I feel like one of the things that's given me an edge, and I've really tried to pursue all these different avenues because the opportunity was always there. And when you're playing at a high level, the edges are small, and there's other people that are, you know, maybe more technically sound than me because they thrive in that more analytical, mathematical environment. So I had to find my edges in the ways that I felt like were my natural strengths. And the mental side is definitely, I think, been one of them I focused a lot on.
Yeah, that's important. I think it's again, you can start comparing poker players to athletes, or it's a sport and all this type of stuff. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, at some level, people are to separate the top or the winners are going to be people that are mentally strong, doing something differently and finding ways to get slight edges, right? It's like, you got to be competitive. You know, you got a little rest, you know, number of tables, how you're doing stuff. Like, it can be a big difference at some point. People aren't just giving it away, or, you know, if they are, you said on any given day, you can, that's what's cool about tournaments as well, that it's like on any given day, you have an opportunity to run well, play well, and potentially hit a massive score. So it's like, you're kind of always in control of a really big big shift in what you're doing. But
we talked about, bankroll being a huge factor in terms of your overall success. But another one that we didn't talk about was consistency. It's like you can be a great player on one day, but if you have an A game and a D game, or an A game and a C game, and you play your C game, more often than someone that always plays their A game, but their A game isn't as good as your A game, well, that latter person is going to fare better because he's playing his A game all the time. So consistency is huge, and that comes down to the mental game. The first mentor I worked with, he told me he worked with professional golfers, and he said, a round of golf is 4 hours. How often are you actually hitting the golf ball? Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes? So what are you doing the other 3 hours and 50 minutes? And he's like, that's what I focus on. And I was like, it just totally hit me, because I'm like, poker's the exact same. You sit at a table for 8 hours, and I was playing, 24 hours at the time in Macau, played 24-hour sessions. But I'm like, how many decisions do I make? I mean, I fold 7 deuce offsuit preflop, but that's not a decision. Like, how many big decisions do I make that impact the results of my session? Maybe 5, 10, 15. So like, what am I doing the rest of it? Worked a lot of my, there's huge improvements in that. And so I think poker, is very important. Very important.
That's very true. All right, let's finish with two more questions here. Do you have an opinion? Actually, I want to ask you the Italian poker market, because Mustafa Canet touched on it. How does it work exactly? Because it is segregated, correct? The Italian, you could play on .it on like Party Poker or Stars or other sites, but it's not. You're not playing against the world player pool. Is that correct?
So there's siloed markets here. .it, .fr, .es for France and Spain. There might be other countries as well, but IT is one of them. And this happened many years ago. Like maybe 7 years ago or something. It happened a while ago. And so they basically shut off from the rest of like PokerStars globally, or Party Pro, whatever site it is globally. So that obviously, created its own market. And for a while there was a lot of opportunity there in the sense of like, when it got siloed, you took away all these good players that could play with them, and then you played with this, rather more, new and efficient market. So you saw some people moving from other countries to be in Italy to play on the .it.
Right.
But then that market became very efficient, and people, and then now the .it Stars market, I think there's some very good players, and my understanding is it's very efficient, just like a lot of the other .fr. Yes, I'm imagining. But again, I'm not. This has been a while since I've played on the site, and I'm not in the know enough to have a strong opinion about what's happening today.
Okay, fair enough. And you travel a lot, your wife and you've been around the world. What is your favorite place? Give me your favorite place to play poker, like just city overall, where you've gone and sort of had the opportunity to play in a live venue. And then as well, your favorite place just to travel, not poker related. Fair question.
Well, Macau for sure for poker, just because it's kind of like the Mecca, the Olympics. I mean, there was really nothing like it. I have a personal affinity for it just because, my experience there and whatever, but Macau is truly one of a kind. As far as personal travel, we Bali, Indonesia, just there's a magic to that place that's very unique. I do love Italy. I mean, I still like really appreciate the things that I was drawn to about Italy so long ago. I guess it's become more normal. So sometimes you lose sight of things that when you see them every day. But I've had a long relationship with Italy, but Italy overall objectively is definitely at the top. And then maybe Antibes, France, is another place that is south of France near Monaco, like a half hour west, is definitely at the top.
Very cool. And do you see, when do you anticipate, I've had friends say they're not going to have their kids go back to school until January at least. It could be even longer. Who knows what's going, based
January? Oh, wow.
Do you think that, well, I mean, you're saying you think it could be 18 months even until the world's back to normal or something, but I mean, or 12 months, a year. But what do you think in terms of traveling? Like, when do you think you'll be back flying somewhere? Over under, when do you take your first flight?
We talk about this all the time because, we were supposed to come back to the US in February. So we literally had a flight booked a week from when we were going to go, like a week. It was like a week after we were supposed to leave in a week, and then the whole thing happened. So it's like, what I want to happen and what I think is going to happen, I'm fighting these two internal forces, and I'm trying to, separate myself to listen to what I think is the highest, the most likely thing to happen. And I'm sometimes clouded by what I want to happen. So it's hard to be objective. Okay, so the school thing, we're at a unique situation where, ironically, the people that are at the least risk are children, right? Factually, but at the same time, it's the group of people that people are the most protective about, right? Like someone sending their kid out into a world where there's a virus is like the last thing to happen, even though they're at the lowest
Not
risk.
to mention they get it and then they're going to give it to you or to your.
They're going to spread it, right? So children are going to spread it dramatically. So opening the schools has that whole effect as well, where it's like forced non-social distancing. It's forced social connecting. Right. So I think, I think the end of the year we're drawing dead. Back until we have a virus. I mean, back until we have a vaccine, I think, saying that not until next January is very possible. Over under for me having a flight, man, it's just too hard to tell. Like if there was a line to bet, I wouldn't set it. I wouldn't offer people options. I just don't, I'm just taking it day by day. And look, dude, if you asked me a month ago, when are you going to be allowed out of the house? I'd say I don't know, but now they're projecting May 4th. That's 65, 70 days. I wouldn't have guessed that. And that's just a projection, which means it's never before. It's only going to be after, right? That's your best case scenario. And it's it might not even be that. So that's 2.5 months without taking a walk. So
right.
Shit, man, a flight is
yeah, that's the place. The last place you want to be is like a casino or in a closed tube.
Or also okay, I'm going to take a flight. I'm going to go to California to see my parents, but am I going to just hop in their house the day? Well, I'm going to have to quarantine for 14 days when I land, because I'm not just going to go interact with my parents who are making all this effort not to go around anyone. And then I'm just going to go in their house. Neither of us want that. So it's do I want to go there and then go somewhere for 14, 16 days before, so it's there's so many things to think about. When it comes to flying, why are you going where you're going, and what are you going to do when you get there? What's reality going to be like? There's so many unknowns. I'm just taking it one day at a time, man.
How
about you, man? You're traveling between I know what's going on?
Yeah, so I basically, but the Bahamas, it's called Bimini, but that's the easiest for me to go, Miami to Bimini. But I'm not traveling anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere else. I don't want to get on planes. It's easy to go on a boat. I don't want to go, Vegas. There's some special event stuff, and it's or I could drive and do something, but I'm just I don't see it happening this year. I don't see it. Yeah. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense. Why do you want to put yourself out there to do that, right? Why do you want to risk it to get other people sick? I'm not even as worried about myself, but like you said, parents and whatnot. Do I really want to go there? And then what are you going to do? And then you can you're going to travel and be inside of a thing. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know how the food's being prepared. You don't know. You just it's nice to have your own routine, your own situation. I think the more people get used to that and comfortable, it's going to be harder to shift. And then I think people are going to become more homebodies. People that were kind of traveling, it could take a couple of years before people start saying, yeah, you know what, we're going to go travel. We're going to go do this. We're going to
go on a cruise. Who's going to go on a cruise?
For a long time. And who wants to go travel somewhere remote and far away in the world? What if you
far away from a hospital, far away from,
it just seems all sort of pushing towards this sort of methods to what people are going to do and how comfortable they're going to be to do stuff. So I don't know, man. It's a bizarre time, right? We live in a very, very crazy world. This 2020 new decade thing got off to a wild start.
Zoom stock is worth 50%.
I guess you could say the decade is technically owns when 2020. It's weird because people say 2020, but really once 2020 ends, it would be the new 2021 through 2030. But I don't know, man. I definitely, some people joke or would you hit a reset button? It's been very, very peculiar times. A lot of weird energy out there.
Yeah, but I feel it's I would never wish this to happen, but I think people are gonna be forced to learn things about themselves, and there's you're gonna look back on this time as we lived through once in a lifetime experience, and even though that was hard and bad and tragic,
and there is a lot of
you're gonna feel like you got through it.
It's also there's a lot of people being forced to sort of relax, reflect. I think a lot of people get to do some personal growth, learning, thinking, reflecting, maybe some great ideas and innovations come out of this time. I mean, there's all kinds of sort of talk about people, the more creative minds in the world back in the day. And there was some events with the
like Isaac Newton, right?
Yeah.
During the quarantine created like his laws of physics. I mean, like I read something about that. I could be saying butchering.
Yeah,
that,
me too. I heard stuff like that. But either way, now technology is so crazy too, right? Imagine back then, couldn't really share, get ideas out, blogs, videos, Zooms, where you can connect and talk to other like-minded people where you're on your own. And now it's like, all right, you're at home, you're forced into a spot, you're not able to do, you're just more efficient in theory with what you're doing. So
you have access to all the smartest minds in the world for free, like on Twitter, YouTube, podcast.
A lot of these New York Times and other articles and things are giving information for free.
I know, it's incredible.
So,
I mean, by the way, so I'm not like, the situation is absolutely tragic. We have, unparalleled job loss, potentially a recession or depression. I mean, it's like clearly not a good situation. I'm just trying to look at the positive and make lemons out of lemonade type of thing, but we can't, not acknowledge how tragic it is. But yeah, I think it's going to be a challenging time for people, but hopefully, they come out stronger on the other side. That's the hope.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope and the wish. And we wish you and your wife the best. Let's do this.
Yeah, you too, man.
$50 retweet courtesy of Party Poker. And Alec, today we are going to let him choose when to roll it, and someone's going to get that ticket. Tell me.
Let's roll it. What are we waiting for?
Here we go. No time. We know what we got, nothing but time, but we don't want to waste time. And that is a winner, Mitja, probably pronouncing it wrong. Congrats to you. We will go ahead and give you that ticket.
Awesome.
Maybe you've won one before. This guy might be a double winner. I don't know. I think some people might have a hack or a cheat on these things. Like, it's like, how do you win multiple giveaways? It's like, I guess some people are just that lucky, but
your last message with them is like 3 days ago. Like,
yeah, he's just like, oh yeah, I'll win this again and run it back. So congrats to you, Alec. I really appreciate it, guys. Again,
this is awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
We'll throw through it here. He's got his website, he's got blogs, really hitting on the current events issues as well as poker. ConsciousPoker, 51,000 subscribers, over 600 videos in that neighborhood. He's got Alec Torelli on Instagram. That's his wife's Instagram, Little Bites of Beauty. Twitter, you can check out his Hendon Mob, of course, see a little bit of his tournament journey, although he's a cash game background. And then again, we basically covered all of the venues. So
yeah,
Alec,
thank you for the shout.
I appreciate it. Yeah, stay safe, stay quarantined,
stay
too, man. Social distancing. All the best, man. I appreciate it.
Peace, love, and social distance, guys. Stay well. Run good, Jeff. See you, buddy.
You, bro. All right. Well, Alec Torelli, continue growing the game of poker. We thank him for his time, and we'll see you guys tomorrow with Dario Sammartino, another Italian background, the second place finisher in the WSOP last year. WSOP main event. We'll have him on tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. And thank you for being here. Thanks for watching, and be safe. Cheers.
It's awesome, man.
Sweet.